My phone rang at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 month after my daughter Sarah's wedding. The name on the screen made me pause. Marcus Chen, the photographer. His voice trembled when I answered. "Mr. Apollo, I need you to come to my studio immediately. Please come alone. Don't tell Sarah anything." Rain pelted my windshield as I drove toward downtown Denver. My mind raced through possibilities while his words echoed in my thoughts. "Sir, I noticed something terrible in the photos. Something that changes everything." The photography studio occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse in Denver's Arts District. I climbed the stairs slowly, my 67-year-old knees protesting against the November cold that had settled into my joints. Marcus waited at the door, his usually cheerful face drawn with worry. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well since making his discovery. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Mr. Apollo," he said, ushering me inside. The studio walls displayed his finest work, including several shots from Sarah's wedding that now seemed to mock me with their apparent joy. "Please sit down. I need to show you something that's been keeping me awake for 3 days." I settled into a leather chair facing his computer setup. 3 large monitors arranged in a semicircle. Marcus had been recommended by 4 different friends, his reputation built on 30 years of capturing Denver's most important moments. He wasn't prone to dramatics, which made his nervous energy all the more concerning. I was doing the final edits for Sarah's wedding album. He began pulling up a folder containing hundreds of images. My assistant had already done the basic color corrections, but I always review everything personally for my premium clients. He clicked through several standard shots of the ceremony, the reception, happy guests raising champagne glasses. These all look normal. I said, though my aerospace engineer's mind was already cataloging details, searching for anomalies. That's what I thought too at first. Marcus opened another folder labeled Background Enhanced. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up a reception photo. I use special software to sharpen backgrounds, making sure no important moments are lost in the blur. That's when I started noticing patterns. The first enhanced image showed my new son-in-law Bradley near the bar, engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with someone partially hidden behind a decorative plant. Marcus zoomed in, adjusting the contrast and clarity. My blood cooled as I recognized the other man. "That's my brother Victor," I said quietly. "We haven't spoken in 20 years. Marcus nodded grimly. "I remembered you mentioning during the planning that he wasn't invited. That's what first caught my attention. But look at this series." He pulled up 6 more photos, all showing Bradley and Victor in various locations throughout the reception, always in the background, always appearing deep in discussion. "There's more." Marcus continued, his voice dropping lower. He opened a shot taken outside the venue during the cocktail hour. "This one almost got deleted because the main subjects are blurry, but look at the background near the service entrance." Even before he enhanced it, I could see Bradley passing something to Victor. As Marcus worked his digital magic, the image sharpened. Papers, multiple documents. The enhancement revealed my company letterhead on at least 2 sheets. "My God," I whispered, leaning closer to the screen. "I debated whether to call you," Marcus admitted. "Photographers see many things we're supposed to ignore. But then, I found this." He pulled up a final image, this one from late in the reception, when most guests had been dancing. In an alcove near the kitchen entrance, Bradley stood with Victor and another man, whose presence hit me like a physical blow. George Hutchinson, my business partner for 30 years, my friend since college, the godfather to my children. The 3 men were examining documents spread on a small table. George held what looked like blueprints. Victor had a tablet displaying what appeared to be financial spreadsheets. And Bradley was photographing everything with his phone. "I've prepared a USB drive with all the enhanced images," Marcus said, handing me a small device. "I haven't shown these to anyone else, and I've removed them from the main wedding files. Whatever this is, Mr. Apollo, I thought you should know first." I pocketed the USB drive, my mind already shifting into the analytical mode that had helped me build a $50 million aerospace company from nothing. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Can you check if Bradley appears in any photos from before the wedding, the engagement party, the rehearsal dinner? Marcus turned back to his computer. I photographed both events. Give me a moment. His fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up older folders. For 10 minutes, we scrutinized images, finding Bradley in normal contexts until… There, Marcus pointed at a rehearsal dinner shot. He's exchanging something with your brother in the parking lot. I stood my knees, steadier now. Purpose overriding age. Marcus, you've done the right thing. Please keep this between us for now. I need time to understand what's happening. Of course, he assured me. Mr. Apollo, I'm sorry to be the bearer of such news. Don't be sorry, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. You may have just saved my family from something terrible. Send me your final invoice with a 50% bonus for your discretion and professionalism. As I descended the stairs, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Hi, Dad. Bradley and I are stopping by tomorrow to discuss something important about your retirement. Love you. Retirement. I hadn't mentioned any plans to retire. My aerospace firm had just landed a new defense contract worth $20 million. Why would my daughter think I was planning to step down? I sat in my car for a long moment, rain drumming on the roof, studying my reflection in the rearview mirror. Silver hair-lined face, but eyes still sharp. Still clear. Someone was playing a game and they'd made a crucial error. They'd underestimated me. The drive home took 30 minutes through Denver traffic. I used the time to catalog recent interactions, searching for signs I might have missed. Bradley had joined our family 2 years ago, sweeping Sarah off her feet with his charm and apparent success in commercial real estate. George had vouched for him, said he'd done business with Bradley's firm. Another piece clicked into place. Margaret met me at the door, her expression shifting from welcome to concern as she read my face. We'd been married 40 years. She could decode my moods like she was reading a technical manual. What's wrong? She asked simply. Not sure yet, I replied, kissing her cheek. Marcus needed to discuss some photo arrangements. I'll be in my office for a while. She studied me for another moment before nodding. Margaret trusted me, knew I'd share when the time was right. It was one of the foundations of our marriage, that trust. Now, I wondered who else I'd trusted that didn't deserve it. My home office had been my sanctuary for 3 decades. Military memorabilia from my Air Force days lined one wall, while another displayed framed patents from innovations that had built our company. The desk, solid oak, inherited from my father, had supported countless late-night sessions developing aerospace solutions. Now it would serve a different purpose. I inserted Marcus's USB drive into my secure laptop, the one I used for sensitive company data. The enhanced photos loaded quickly, each image, another piece of evidence in a puzzle I was beginning to understand. But first, I needed to verify my suspicions. Our company's security system allowed executive-level access monitoring. I logged in remotely, navigating to the access logs for the past 6 months. What I found made my jaw tighten. Sarah's keycard had been used to enter restricted areas 17 times in the last 2 months, always after regular business hours, always on weekends when she was supposedly out of town with Bradley. I cross-referenced the dates with my calendar. Every single unauthorized entry corresponded with trips Bradley had planned for them. Wine country in Napa, skiing in Aspen, a romantic getaway to San Francisco. Except Sarah's keycard had been accessing our prototype development lab while she was supposedly hundreds of miles away. The office door creaked softly. Margaret entered with a cup of tea, setting it on the desk beside me. She glanced at the screen showing the security logs, but said nothing. After 4 decades together, she knew when to push and when to simply provide support. I'll be here if you need me, she said quietly, squeezing my shoulder before leaving. I sipped the tea Earl Grey, with honey exactly how I liked it. Small comforts mattered when your world tilted off its axis. Returning to the investigation, I pulled up the company's digital storage access records. More troubling patterns emerged. Files containing sensitive defense contract specifications had been viewed and downloaded using Sarah's credentials. Technical drawings for our latest guidance system prototype. Financial projections for the next 5 years. Patent applications not yet filed. My daughter didn't have the technical knowledge to understand these documents. She was a talented marketing manager for a fashion retailer creative and brilliant in her own field, but aerospace engineering might as well have been ancient Greek to her, which meant someone else was using her access. I needed more information. Sarah had left her old laptop when she moved in with Bradley 6 months ago, claiming she'd transferred everything important to her new one. It sat in the closet with other items she'd stored here. I retrieved it, powering it on, and logging in with the password she'd used since high school. Her childhood dog's name, followed by her birth year. The desktop looked normal at first glance. Photos from college work documents, music files. But my years in the Air Force had taught me about hidden partitions, digital spaces carved out of hard drives to store secrets. I ran a deep scan utility, the kind our IT security team used. 20 minutes later, the scan revealed what I'd feared. A hidden partition password, protected and encrypted. Standard encryption would have stopped most people, but I had resources. I copied the partition to an external drive and started my decryption software, military-grade tools from my defense contractor connections. While it worked, I searched through Sarah's normal files looking for behavioral patterns. Her email showed increasing mentions of my forgetfulness starting 3 months ago. Messages to her mother expressing concern about my confusion during family dinners. A draft email to Bradley worrying about my declining mental state that was never sent. The decryption completed with a soft chime. I opened the hidden partition and found myself staring at audio files. Dozens of them labeled by date. I clicked the oldest, from 4 months ago. Bradley's voice filled my office. "Your father's getting older, Sarah. We need to start thinking about his future." "He seems fine to me," my daughter replied, sounding uncertain. Didn't you notice how he repeated the same story twice at dinner last week?" I guess I didn't really notice." "That's because you love him. Sometimes love blinds us to difficult truths. My grandmother had similar signs before her Alzheimer's diagnosis." I paused the recording, my hands clenching into fists. The dinner he referenced, I remembered it clearly. I had told the story twice, but intentionally because Sarah's cousin had arrived late and asked to hear it. Bradley had twisted a normal situation into evidence of mental decline. The next recording was from a week later, this time 3 voices, Bradley, Victor, and George. "The old man's patents alone are worth $30 million. Victor said, his voice still carrying the bitter edge I remembered from our father's funeral. "Should have been mine anyway. I'm the older brother." "Contesting the will 20 years ago didn't work," George reminded him. "But this way is cleaner. Medical power of attorney, a friendly doctor's evaluation, and Apollo gets a comfortable retirement home while we manage his assets." "What about Margaret?" Bradley asked. "She'll follow her husband. Devoted wives always do. Once Apollo's declared incompetent, she won't have legal standing to interfere." "And Sarah?" "Leave Sarah to me," Bradley replied with a confidence that made my skin crawl. "She already believes her father is declining. A few more months of careful suggestion, maybe some pharmaceutical assistance to create actual confusion, and she'll be begging us to help him." Pharmaceutical assistance. I thought back over recent months trying to identify when I might have been drugged. Then it hit me. Bradley always insisted on making coffee when they visited, claimed it was his way of contributing. He'd bring me a cup specially prepared while everyone else served themselves from the pot. I'd accepted it the first few times, then started discreetly switching cups with Margaret when Bradley wasn't looking. An old habit from my military days: never accept a drink you didn't see prepared. Margaret never mentioned the switch, probably assumed I preferred her coffee cup for some quirky reason. More recordings revealed the full scope of their plan. Victor had connected Bradley to George 2 years ago, specifically targeting Sarah as a way into our family. Bradley's background in real estate was fabricated, his references, all routing back to companies Victor controlled. They'd planned every step from the whirlwind romance to the lavish wedding that put me in a generous mood, more likely to trust my new son-in-law. The final recording was from the night before the wedding. Bradley spoke alone, probably making a voice memo. Tomorrow, I marry into the Stavros family. Apollo Stavros, the brilliant engineer who stole my future father-in-law's inheritance through manipulation. Victor deserves justice. The old man built an empire on stolen opportunity. Time to return it to its rightful owner. Sarah's sweet, but naive. She'll believe whatever I tell her about her father. By this time, next year, I'll control everything. The company, the patents, the fortune. Victor gets his revenge. George gets his golden parachute. And I get $50 million and a beautiful, grateful wife who thinks I saved her family from tragedy. I stopped the recording sitting back in my chair. The full picture was clear now. A con years in the making, my brother's revenge served cold through a surrogate, my oldest friend's betrayal for money, and my daughter caught in the middle being psychologically manipulated by a master predator. They'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed that age automatically meant weakness, that a 67-year-old man who'd built a defense contractor from nothing, who'd served in Air Force intelligence, who'd survived corporate espionage attempts, and hostile takeovers would simply fade away when pushed. I opened a new document and began typing. Lists of evidence timelines connections. By midnight, I had 30 pages of detailed notes. But information without action was useless. Tomorrow, they were coming to discuss my retirement. Tonight, I needed to prepare for war. First, I made copies of everything. The photos, the recordings, the access logs. I uploaded encrypted copies to 3 different cloud services and stored physical copies in my safety deposit box. Then, I began researching Bradley Stevens, or whoever he really was. My computer chimed softly. 3 a.m. Margaret would wonder why I hadn't come to bed. I gathered my materials, locked them in my private safe, and made my way upstairs. She was reading, waiting for me, as I'd known she would be. Bad, she asked simply. Very bad. I confirmed, climbing into bed beside her. But not unsolvable. Tomorrow, I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? She set down her book and looked at me directly. 40 years, Apollo. Have I ever not trusted you? No. I smiled sadly. But tomorrow, I'm going to seem different. Confused, maybe even scared. I need you to play along without asking questions. The photos showed something about Bradley. I nodded. And George, and Victor. Her eyes widened. Victor's name was rarely spoken in our home. How bad? They're trying to steal everything we've built, using Sarah to do it. Margaret's face hardened. She was a gentle soul who ran charity events and grew prize-winning roses, but threatened her children, and she became someone else entirely. What do you need me to do? Just watch. React naturally to what you see. And whatever happens, know that I'm in complete control. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But Apollo, when this is over, they better pray the law gets to them before I do. I pulled her close, grateful beyond words for this woman who'd stood beside me through everything. Tomorrow would begin the performance of my lifetime. But tonight, I held my wife and prepared for battle. Sleep eluded me that night. By 5 a.m, I was back in my office reviewing my notes and planning my strategy. The art of war, Sun Tzu wrote, is the art of deception. When weak, appear strong. When strong, appear weak. Bradley and his conspirators expected to find a declining old man. I would give them exactly what they wanted to see. At 7:30, I drove to a small diner on the outskirts of Denver, a place I'd never visited before. Rita Hawkins was already waiting in a corner booth, coffee steaming in front of her. I'd found her through a contact at the Pentagon, a former FBI agent who'd specialized in financial crimes before going private. Her reputation was impeccable, her discretion absolute. Mr. Stavros. She greeted me, her handshake firm and professional. At 55, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer and remained unimpressed. Your message mentioned a delicate situation requiring immediate attention. I slid her a folder containing copies of the photos and a summary of my findings. She reviewed them methodically, her expression never changing. "How deep does this go?" she asked finally. "At least 2 years of planning, possibly more. I need a complete background on Bradley Stevens, my brother Victor's recent activities, and any connections between them and my business partner, George Hutchinson." I placed an envelope on the table. $25,000 retainer cash. I'll need daily updates, complete discretion, and everything documented for potential legal action. Rita pocketed the envelope without counting it. "What's your timeline?" "They're accelerating their plan. I have maybe 3 weeks before they make their major move. I'll start immediately. Expect my first report within 48 hours. She paused, studying me. "You know this won't be pretty. If they've been planning this long." "I know," I said quietly. "But my daughter's caught in the middle. I need the truth, all of it." After leaving Rita, I drove to a cabin 40 miles outside Denver, a property I'd purchased through a shell company years ago. James Thornton was waiting on the porch, looking every inch the successful corporate lawyer, despite the rustic setting. We'd served together in the Air Force, remained close through decades of civilian life. If anyone could navigate the legal minefield ahead, it was James. "Apollo," he embraced me warmly. "Your message sounded urgent." Inside the cabin, I laid out everything. The photos, the recordings, my discoveries. James took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he leaned back, whistling softly. "This is sophisticated stuff," he said. "They're not just after your money, they want to destroy you personally first. Make it look like everyone's acting in your best interest." He tapped his pen against the pad. "But they've made several legal mistakes. The falsified identity alone is federal fraud. The unauthorized access to defense contractor files, that's potential espionage charges. What do I need to do? First, protect your assets. We'll create an irrevocable trust transfer of the patents and intellectual property immediately. Margaret, as primary trustee with succession plans that exclude anyone involved in this scheme. Second, get medical evaluations from multiple independent physicians. Establish a clear baseline of your mental competency. Third, document everything. Every interaction, every conversation. Colorado is a one-party consent state for recordings. And Sarah." James's expression softened. "That's the hardest part. She's likely been psychologically manipulated for months, possibly longer. When this comes out, she'll need support, professional help. The betrayal trauma will be significant." We spent 3 hours structuring legal protections, planning contingencies. By the time I left, I had a clear battle plan and the best legal mind in Colorado on my side. The drive home required mental preparation. Today's performance would set the stage for everything to follow. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Bradley's Tesla already parked outside. They'd arrived early, hoping to catch me off guard. Perfect. I sat in my car for an extra moment, adjusting my expression, letting my shoulders slump slightly. When I entered my home, I moved slower than usual, adding a slight shuffle to my step. "Dad?" Sarah jumped up from the living room couch, Bradley beside her. "We've been waiting for you. Where were you?" I paused in the doorway, blinking as if confused. I went for a drive. Needed to clear my head. "Did we have plans today?" Bradley and Sarah exchanged a look I was meant to see. "We texted you yesterday, remember?" Sarah said gently. "About discussing your future." "Oh, yes, of course." I moved to my chair, sitting heavily. "My future? I suppose at my age that's something to consider." Margaret entered with a tea tray, her performance flawless. She set it down carefully, her hand briefly touching my shoulder, a gesture of support that looked like concern. "Mr. Stavros." Bradley began, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Sarah and I have been talking, and we're worried about you. The stress of running such a large company at your age. It is stressful. I agreed, letting my voice waver slightly. The new defense contract especially. So many details to remember. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in specifications and requirements. Another meaningful look between them. Bradley leaned forward. That's exactly what we mean. A man of your accomplishments deserves to enjoy his golden years. Play golf, travel with Margaret, spend time with grandchildren when they come. The presumption that there would be grandchildren from this marriage made my stomach turn, but I maintained my facade. Grandchildren would be nice, I said wistfully. But the company, I built it from nothing. Which is why it deserves to be in capable hands, Bradley pressed. George has mentioned he'd be willing to take on more responsibility. With the right support structure. George is a good man, I said, noting how Bradley's eyes lit up at my apparent agreement. We've been partners for so long. I trust him completely. Sarah moved to sit beside me, taking my hand. Dad, we just want what's best for you. There are wonderful communities where you and Mom could live with medical support nearby if needed. Bradley's found a beautiful place in Scottsdale, Arizona. I let confusion color my voice. But our life is here. My work. Dad. Sarah's voice carried genuine concern, mixed with Bradley's planted fears. You've been forgetting things. Last week you called me 3 times about the same question. I hadn't called her at all last week, which meant they were now fabricating events. I did. I don't remember that. Margaret stepped forward. Apollo gets tired in the evenings. Perhaps we should discuss this another time. Of course. Bradley stood smoothly. We don't want to overwhelm anyone. But Mr. Stavros, would you consider getting a medical evaluation, just to establish a baseline for your health? I suppose that would be sensible. I agreed, knowing James had already arranged for 3 independent evaluations next week. If you think it's necessary. They left after another 30 minutes of subtle manipulation. I maintained my act until their car disappeared down the street, then straightened, the confused old man vanishing instantly. That was disturbing to watch, Margaret said, her voice tight with anger. The way he plays her, twisting her love for you into a weapon. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I warned her. But every word they spoke just added to the evidence. The house security system recorded everything. That evening, Rita called with her preliminary findings. Bradley Stevens is an alias, she reported. His real name is Bradley Coleman. He has a history we need to discuss in person. Can you meet tomorrow? I agreed, then spent the rest of the night preparing for the week ahead. I installed hidden cameras in my office at work, small devices that would capture anyone accessing my files. I created a detailed log of my daily activities, establishing patterns that would prove my mental competence. I also began transferring personal assets according to James's instructions, careful to make it look like routine financial planning. The next morning, I met Rita at a different location, a park where we could walk and talk without being overheard. What she'd discovered chilled me, despite the warm September sun. Bradley Coleman has been married twice before. She began handing me a file. His first wife died in a car accident 2 years after their wedding. Single car drove off a mountain road. She'd just inherited $3 million from her grandfather. The second wife died of an apparent suicide, leaving a note about depression. She was worth $8 million. Both deaths were investigated, but no charges filed. He's escalated, I observed. From murder to elaborate fraud. My guess is the investigation spooked him. This scheme is safer, leaves him looking like a hero instead of a suspect. Rita showed me more documents. Your brother Victor met him at a casino in Vegas 3 years ago. They've been planning this ever since. Victor provided the funding and connections, Bradley provided the charm and execution. What about George? That's more complicated. George has been embezzling from your company for 5 years. Small amounts carefully hidden. My estimate is he's taken about 2 million total. Bradley found out and used it as leverage. Help them or go to prison. I felt the betrayal like a physical blow. George, who'd stood as my best man, who'd celebrated every success with me, who'd held my daughter as a baby. 5 years of theft while looking me in the eye every day. There's more, Rita continued. They have a doctor lined up. Marcus Fitzgerald, a geriatric specialist with a gambling problem. He owes Victor's casino connections $400,000. He's agreed to diagnose you with dementia, regardless of your actual condition. When? They're planning to have you see him next week. It will be presented as a second opinion after your regular evaluation. I nodded, processing the information. Keep digging. I need every detail, every connection, and Rita start looking into protection for my daughter. When this explodes, Bradley might become dangerous. Already on it, she assured me. I have colleagues who specialize in personal security. We'll keep Sarah safe without her knowing. Walking back to my car, I felt the weight of what lay ahead, but also a cold determination. They'd made their moves, set their pieces on the board. Now it was my turn. The silent wolf was fully awake, and hunting season had begun. The next 2 weeks passed in a carefully choreographed dance of deception. I continued my performance of gradual decline, occasionally forgetting appointments or repeating questions. Each slip calculated to reinforce their narrative, while never going so far as to genuinely concern Margaret or my employees who weren't part of the conspiracy. Bradley grew bolder with each passing day. He started appearing at the office ostensibly to help with my workload. I watched through hidden cameras as he photographed sensitive documents after hours using Sarah's access codes. George facilitated these visits, assuring security that Bradley was family, just trying to support me during a difficult time. The family dinner that marked the beginning of the end came on a Thursday evening. Margaret had prepared her famous lamb roast, the dining room warm with candlelight and the aroma of rosemary. Sarah arrived early to help with preparations, Bradley trailing behind with an expensive bottle of wine and his practiced smile. "This is delicious, Margaret," Bradley complimented after we'd settled at the table. "You'll have to share the recipe with Sarah." "Of course," Margaret replied warmly, though I caught the steel beneath her pleasant tone. She'd become an excellent actress herself these past weeks. George arrived 20 minutes late, apologizing profusely about traffic. He took his usual seat, the one he'd occupied at countless family dinners over 3 decades. My godson, Sarah's honorary uncle, the man stealing from me while planning my destruction. "Apollo seems tired lately." George observed his concern, seemingly genuine. "The Morrison contract must be taking its toll." "I have been tired," I admitted, letting my hand shake slightly as I reached for my water glass. "Some days, I can barely remember all the specifications." "Did you review the guidance system parameters I sent over?" "You didn't send anything," George said gently. "We discussed it, but no files came through." I had sent them, of course. George had received and deleted them, another brick in the wall of my supposed incompetence. "Oh, I could have sworn." "Well, I'll resend them tomorrow." "Maybe it's time to consider stepping back," Bradley suggested, his voice full of false compassion. The company would be in good hands with George at the helm. "I've been thinking the same thing," a new voice added from the doorway. Victor stood there uninvited and unexpected, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Hello, brother. I hope you don't mind. I've been reflecting on our estrangement, and I wanted to make amends while there's still time." The theatrical pause before "still time" wasn't lost on me. I stood slowly, letting uncertainty play across my features. "Victor, is that really you?" "It's me, Apollo. 20 years is too long for brothers to be apart. May I join you?" Margaret, ever the gracious hostess, despite her fury, set another place. Victor settled in his performance of the repentant brother, Oscar-worthy. He spoke of regrets, missed opportunities, the importance of family. all while sharing knowing glances with Bradley and George. "I heard about your recent successes," Victor continued. "The defense contracts the patents. Father would have been so proud. Father would have been horrified to see one son plotting against another, but I simply nodded. He always wanted us to work together." "It's not too late for that," Victor said eagerly. "I could help with the business. Support you and George. Families should stick together." "That's a wonderful idea." Sarah chimed in, her eyes bright with hope. She'd always been sad about our estrangement, never knowing the full truth about Victor's attempts to destroy me after our father's death. Dad could use the support. The conversation continued, each of them taking turns to reinforce my supposed decline. Bradley mentioned finding me confused in the garden last week, a complete fabrication. George recalled me missing an important meeting, another lie. Victor expressed concern about my weight loss, though I hadn't lost a pound. Then came the moment they'd orchestrated. Bradley cleared his throat. "Actually, while we're all here, there's something Sarah and I wanted to discuss. We think it might be time for Apollo to see a specialist, just to ensure everything's okay." "A specialist?" I let worry creep into my voice. "Dr. Marcus Fitzgerald comes highly recommended," Bradley continued smoothly. "He specializes in cognitive evaluation for executives. Very discreet, very thorough." There it was. The corrupt doctor Rita had identified. The one who owed gambling debts to Victor's connections. I pretended to consider it while Margaret squeezed my hand under the table. "If you all think it's necessary," I said finally, "I trust your judgment." The relief on their faces was almost comical. They thought they had me. The confused old man agreeing to his own destruction. Sarah looked genuinely relieved, and that hurt more than all the other betrayals combined. My daughter truly believed she was helping me. After dinner, as they prepared to leave, Victor pulled me aside. "Apollo, I want you to know that whatever happens, I'll make sure Margaret is taken care of. You have my word." His word. The same word he'd given when he promised to honor our father's will, then spent 2 years in court trying to overturn it. I clasped his shoulder, letting my eyes water with fake emotion. "Thank you, brother. That means everything." They left together, Bradley, supporting Sarah, who seemed emotionally drained from the evening. George lingered, helping Margaret clear the table like he had so many times before. The familiar gesture now felt like mockery. "You should rest, Apollo," he suggested. "I can handle the Morrison contract review tomorrow." "You're a good friend, George," I replied, meaning none of it. "I don't know what I'd do without you." After he left, Margaret and I sat in the living room, the performance over for the night. She poured 2 glasses of Scotch Good Scottish single malt we saved for special occasions. This seemed to qualify. "How can you stand it?" she asked, sitting across from them, knowing what they're planning. "Because every lie they tell, every false concern they express, is another nail in their coffin." Rita called today. She has evidence of Bradley's previous marriages, George's embezzlement, Victor's connections to organized crime through those casinos. James has the trust documents ready. By next week, our assets will be protected no matter what happens. And Sarah? That was the hardest question. I've arranged for Dr. Patricia Hernandez to be available. She specializes in cult deprogramming and psychological manipulation recovery. When this breaks, Sarah will need immediate support. Margaret sipped her scotch thoughtfully. "She'll be devastated." "Yes," I agreed. "But she'll survive. She's stronger than they think. Stronger than she knows." The next morning, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I visited 3 separate doctors, all respected specialists with no connection to Victor's network. Each performed comprehensive cognitive evaluations. Dr. Samuel Chen, neurologist; Dr. Rebecca Martinez, psychiatrist; Dr. William Thompson, geriatric specialist. All 3 found me in excellent mental health, their reports detailed and unequivocal. "Your cognitive function is remarkable for any age," Dr. Chen told me after the tests. "Whatever concerns your family has expressed are unfounded. I had each doctor prepare sealed reports to be opened only if questions arose about my mental state. Legal documentation that would destroy any attempt to have me declared incompetent. That afternoon, Rita met me with more disturbing news. "They're moving faster than anticipated," she reported. "Bradley has scheduled meetings with 3 major competitors of yours. He's shopping your technology promising delivery once they control the company." "Which competitors?" "Zhao Industries, Blackstone Defense, and Meridian Technologies. He's asking $50 million for the complete patent portfolio and ongoing contracts." I knew all 3 companies. Zhao had tried to steal our designs before through corporate espionage. Blackstone had attempted a hostile takeover 5 years ago. Meridian was run by a man I'd fired for selling secrets to the Chinese. Bradley couldn't have chosen worse potential buyers if he'd tried. "Do we have proof of these meetings?" "Video surveillance from 2 email trails for all 3. He's using encrypted communications, but my tech specialist cracked them. They're promising delivery within 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That was their timeline. Have me declared incompetent, seize control of the company, and sell everything before anyone could mount a legal challenge. They'd probably already drafted the papers committing me to a facility where I'd be kept sedated and manageable. "There's something else," Rita added. "Sarah's pregnant, about 3 months along. She hasn't told anyone yet, but she's been to an obstetrician twice." The news hit me like a physical blow. A grandchild. Sarah carrying Bradley's baby while he plotted our destruction. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Does Bradley know? Unknown. But it explains why he's accelerating the timeline. He wants everything locked down before the pregnancy becomes public. Harder to vilify a pregnant woman's father. I stood at my office window, looking out at the Denver skyline. My company occupied the top 3 floors of this building, a testament to 40 years of innovation and hard work. They wanted to steal it all, sell it to the highest bidder, destroy everything I'd built while using my own daughter as the weapon. "Rita, I need you to do something additional. Start reaching out to Bradley's previous victims' families. Carefully, discreetly. They deserve to know justice might finally come." "Already in progress," she assured me. The first wife's sister has been investigating on her own for years. She has evidence the police dismissed. The second wife's brother is a state prosecutor in California. He's very interested in what we've discovered. The net was closing, but not around me. Around them. Every move they made added to their eventual downfall. But first, I had to play out this charade a little longer. The appointment with the corrupt doctor was in 3 days. The board meeting where they planned to force my retirement was in 2 weeks. The scheduled grand reveal at our anniversary gala was in 3 weeks. So much could go wrong before then. But I looked at my reflection in the window, saw my father's determination in my own eyes. They'd chosen their war. Now they would learn why I'd survived and thrived in the defense industry for 4 decades. In business as in battle, the winner was often the one who could endure the longest plan, the furthest, and strike when least expected. The silent wolf continued his hunt, patient and methodical. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show my teeth. The appointment with Dr. Marcus Fitzgerald arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. Bradley insisted on driving me, claiming concern about my ability to navigate downtown traffic. I accepted with grateful confusion, playing my role while memorizing every detail for the inevitable legal proceedings. The office was in an upscale medical building, all glass and steel, attempting to project competence and trust. Fitzgerald himself matched the facade, silver-haired, and distinguished the perfect image of a caring physician. Only the slight tremor in his hands and the debt collection notices I'd seen in Rita's surveillance photos revealed the truth beneath. "Mr. Stavros." He greeted warmly, shaking hands with practiced sincerity. "Bradley has told me so much about you. Please make yourself comfortable." The evaluation was a farce. Fitzgerald asked leading questions designed to elicit confused responses. When I answered clearly, he'd rephrase until my accurate replies sounded uncertain. His notes, visible from my angle, bore little resemblance to our actual conversation. "Can you tell me what year it is?" he asked. 2024, I replied clearly. He wrote something, frowning. "And who is the current president?" I answered correctly, adding details about recent policies to demonstrate awareness. He scribbled more notes, his frown deepening. For 90 minutes, he tried various tactics to trip me up, growing increasingly frustrated when I remained coherent and precise. "I think that's enough for today," he finally declared. "I'll need time to review my findings and compile a report." "When will that be ready?" Bradley asked eagerly from the waiting room. "Give me a week," Fitzgerald replied, though I knew the report was already written, declaring me incompetent regardless of my performance. That afternoon, I met with James at his law office. He'd assembled a team of associates, all specialists, in different aspects of what was coming. The conference room table was covered with documents, evidence, legal precedents. "The trust is ironclad," James reported. "All patents and intellectual property have been transferred. Margaret has full control with succession plans that specifically exclude Victor Bradley and George. Any attempt to challenge will trigger automatic defensive provisions." "What about the company itself?" "Board meeting is scheduled for next week. They'll try to force your retirement based on Fitzgerald's evaluation. But I'll be there with the 3 independent evaluations showing perfect cognitive function. The moment they present falsified medical documents, we have them on fraud." "And criminal charges?" Patricia Reeves, the federal prosecutor James had brought in, spoke up. "The FBI is already interested based on the defense contract aspect. Attempted sale of classified technology to foreign entities carries serious penalties. Add in the fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy charges, we're looking at 20 to 30 years for each conspirator." Bradley's previous marriages. California and Nevada are reopening both cases based on new evidence. The families have been notified. If murder charges result, he'll face life without parole. I nodded, satisfied with the legal preparations. But there remained the personal element, the human cost of justice. My daughter. Dr. Patricia Hernandez, the therapist I'd engaged, leaned forward. "She'll need immediate intervention when this breaks. The psychological manipulation has been extensive. She genuinely believes she's helping you. The revelation will cause significant trauma. I recommend having her admitted to my facility voluntarily for at least 72 hours of supervised care." "Whatever she needs," I assured her. "Cost is no object." "There's one more thing," Rita added, entering the conference room with a thick folder. "The competitor meetings have escalated. They've set a sale date for 3 days after the board meeting. Zhao Industries has agreed to $75 million for everything, including current defense contracts. That's espionage and treason." The pieces were falling into place. In their greed, they'd committed enough crimes to ensure none of them would see freedom for decades. But I needed them all in one place for maximum impact, needed the reveal to be public and undeniable. "The anniversary gala," I said. 3 weeks from now. Everyone will be there. Employees, partners, clients, media. They won't be able to spin or deny anything." "It's risky," James warned. "Letting it go that far. They could do a lot of damage in 3 weeks." "Not if I appear to be cooperating. Let them think they've won. Pride goeth before the fall, and their arrogance is our greatest weapon." The next week passed in careful preparation. I allowed my confusion to deepen slightly. Missed a meeting here. Forgot a name there. Always witnessed by Bradley or George. Always carefully documented by my hidden cameras, showing the truth of my performance. The board meeting arrived on a crisp Thursday morning. I dressed carefully, choosing a suit slightly too large as if I'd lost weight. Margaret fussed with my tie, her eyes communicating her love and trust, even as she played the worried wife. The boardroom filled quickly. 12 members, including myself and George. Bradley attended as family support, Victor as a potential advisory member. James sat beside me as my attorney, his presence causing visible discomfort among the conspirators. George called the meeting to order, his expression grave. "We're here to discuss the future leadership of Stavros Aerospace, specifically concerns about Apollo's continued capacity to serve as CEO." "What concerns?" asked Janet Morrison, our longest-serving board member besides George and myself. Bradley stood producing Fitzgerald's report with a flourish. "Dr. Marcus Fitzgerald, a respected specialist, has evaluated Apollo. His findings indicate significant cognitive decline, consistent with early-stage dementia." Gasps around the table. Several members looked at me with genuine sympathy. I let my shoulders slump, appeared to struggle with understanding. "This is troubling," said Robert Chen, our CFO. "But shouldn't we have multiple opinions for something this serious?" "Of course," James interjected smoothly. "Which is why Mr. Stavros voluntarily sought evaluation from 3 independent specialists." He produced the sealed reports, distributing copies. Dr. Samuel Chen, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, and Dr. William Thompson all found Apollo in excellent cognitive health. The room erupted. George tried to maintain control while Bradley's face flushed red. Victor half rose from his seat before catching himself. "Those evaluations were clearly biased," Bradley protested. "Dr. Fitzgerald is completely objective." "Is he?" James pulled out another document. "This is evidence that Dr. Fitzgerald owes $400,000 in gambling debts to casinos connected to Victor Stavros. Hardly objective." "How dare you?" Victor snarled, abandoning pretense. "My brother is sick. We're trying to help him." "By selling his company to competitors?" I asked, suddenly, clear and sharp. The confused old man vanished as I stood every inch the CEO who'd built an empire. "By stealing technology, meant for America's defense, and auctioning it to the highest bidder." "Apollo?" George stammered. "You don't understand. We were protecting your legacy." "My legacy?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "You mean the $2 million you've embezzled over 5 years, George? Did you think I wouldn't notice that I wouldn't have forensic accountants reviewing every transaction?" The color drained from George's face. Other board members recoiled from him, as if his corruption was contagious. Bradley grabbed Sarah's arm, trying to leave, but security guards appeared at the doors. I'd arranged their presence with building management, explaining a potential corporate espionage situation. "This is kidnapping," Bradley threatened. "I'll sue every one of you." Sue from prison. Patricia Reeves announced, entering with FBI credentials displayed. "Bradley Coleman, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and suspicion of murder in 2 previous cases. George Hutchinson, you're under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy. Victor Stavros, you're under arrest for conspiracy and racketeering." The arrests happened quickly, professionally. Bradley struggled until agents subdued him. George went quietly, shoulders slumped in defeat. Victor glared at me with pure hatred, the same look he'd worn at our father's funeral when the will was read. "You always were too clever," he spat as they cuffed him. "But this isn't over." "Yes, Victor, it is," I replied calmly. 20 years of your hatred ends today." After they were removed, I addressed the stunned board. "I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary to expose this conspiracy. I am in perfect health, as the legitimate medical evaluations confirm. However, I do intend to restructure the company leadership. Janet, would you consider the position of president while I remain CEO and chairman?" Janet, recovering her composure, nodded. "I'd be honored, Apollo." The meeting concluded with unanimous support for my continued leadership and plans to strengthen corporate security. As members filed out offering support and expressing shock at the betrayal, I remained behind with James. "Sarah doesn't know yet," I said quietly. "Dr. Hernandez is with her now. Margaret, too. They'll break it gently, have her admitted for care before the media gets wind of this." I stared out at the city skyline, my empire intact, but my family shattered. Justice had been served, but the cost was higher than any financial loss could have been. My daughter would learn her husband was a killer, her uncle, a criminal, Her honorary uncle, a thief. The psychological damage would take years to heal. You did the right thing, James assured me. They would have destroyed everything, including Sarah eventually. Bradley's previous wives didn't survive their marriages. I knew he was right. But knowing didn't ease the pain of what was still to come. The anniversary gala loomed where the full truth would be revealed to the world. The trap was sprung, the predators caged, but the hardest part, rebuilding my daughter's life and trust, had only just begun. The grand ballroom at the Denver Marriott had never looked more spectacular. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables dressed in silver linens. Ice sculptures commemorated Stavros Aerospace's 35-year journey from a garage startup to a $500 million defense contractor. 200 guests mingled in formal attire, champagne flowing as freely as the congratulations. I stood near the entrance greeting arrivals with Margaret beside me. 3 weeks had passed since the arrests. The media had been told only that there were internal security matters under investigation. Tonight, they would learn the truth. Every major aerospace journalist was present, along with clients, competitors, and colleagues who'd shaped our industry. You look distinguished, Margaret whispered, adjusting my bow tie. She wore midnight blue that complemented her silver hair every inch the elegant executive's wife. Only I could see the steel in her spine, the protective fury she'd harbored since learning of the betrayal. Any word from Sarah? I asked quietly. Dr. Hernandez says she's making progress. She watched the video you recorded for her yesterday. Cried through it, but she watched. I'd made the video explaining everything, taking responsibility for the deception, while emphasizing my love for her. Dr. Hernandez said it was too soon to predict how our relationship would recover, but she was optimistic about Sarah's resilience. Marcus Chen, the photographer whose sharp eyes had started this journey, approached with his camera. Mr. Stavros, could I get a photo before your speech? Of course, Marcus. None of this would have been possible without you. He smiled modestly. Just doing my job. Though I've certainly become more popular with law enforcement agencies, wanting to hire me for evidence analysis. George's wife, Diane, arrived, her face a mask of humiliation and fury. She'd filed for divorce within days of his arrest, her lawyer already forensically dissecting their finances to recover what he'd stolen. She nodded coldly to me before disappearing into the crowd. I didn't blame her anger. 30 years of friendship destroyed by greed. At precisely 8 o'clock, I took the stage. The room quieted, anticipation building. Many suspected tonight would bring major announcements about the company's future. They had no idea how major. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone system. 35 years ago, I started this company with a simple dream: to push the boundaries of aerospace technology while maintaining absolute integrity. Tonight, I stand before you to celebrate that achievement, but also to share a story about what happens when that integrity is challenged. The screens around the room came to life, displaying the company's early days. Photos of me in my garage workshop, early prototypes, the first major contract signing. Then, the images shifted to my wedding photo with Margaret, Sarah's baby pictures, family moments that built the foundation of my life. Success in business means nothing without family, I continued, which is why the events I'm about to share cut deeper than any professional setback could. The screens changed again. Marcus's enhanced wedding photos appeared, showing Bradley and Victor in their clandestine meetings. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I explained what the images revealed, how my photographer's diligence had exposed a conspiracy years in the making. My brother Victor harbored resentment for 20 years over our father's will. He found the perfect weapon in Bradley Coleman, a man who specialized in marrying into wealthy families with fatal consequences. I clicked to the next slide, showing Bradley's previous wives. Both died mysteriously after their wealth transferred to him. My daughter was to be his third victim. Shocked murmurs filled the room. Several journalists were already typing on their phones, sensing the story of the year. I continued methodically, showing George's embezzlement evidence, the attempted sale of defense secrets, the plan to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. They counted on my age, making me weak. I said steel entering my voice. They forgot that before I was a CEO, I was Air Force intelligence. Before I was a grandfather, I was a warrior. And I never forgot those skills. The presentation continued, with video evidence, recorded conversations, the full scope of their criminal enterprise laid bare. Rita's investigation findings, the FBI's involvement, the reopened murder cases. Nothing was hidden, no detail spared. The audience sat transfixed, witnessing corporate drama that surpassed any fiction. 3 weeks ago, they were arrested. I revealed showing footage from the boardroom takedown. George Hutchinson, my friend of 30 years, faces 20 years for embezzlement and conspiracy. Victor, my brother, likely will die in prison for his crimes. And Bradley Coleman awaits trial for murder, facing life without parole. But this story isn't about their punishment. I continued, my voice softening. It's about the collateral damage of betrayal. My daughter Sarah believed she'd found love, only to discover she'd married a predator. She believed she was helping her aging father, only to learn she'd been psychologically manipulated by a master criminal. The true victim in this tragedy isn't me. It's her. Sarah's picture appeared on screen from her wedding day, radiant with happiness that had been built on lies. She's receiving treatment, learning to recognize the manipulation she endured. She's strong like her mother, and she'll recover. But she'll carry these scars forever, as will I, for the role I played in deceiving her to catch her deceivers. The room was silent now, the weight of the story settling over the audience. I looked out at faces reflecting shock, sympathy, admiration, and horror in equal measure. Stavros Aerospace will continue. I announced, shifting to the future. Janet Morrison assumes the role of president effective immediately. New security measures are in place. Our commitment to integrity hasn't wavered. If anything, it's stronger for having been tested. But I share this story publicly for a larger purpose. I said, building to my conclusion. In our interconnected world, trust is currency. When that trust is betrayed, especially by those closest to us, the damage ripples outward like waves from a stone thrown in still water. Each of you has trusted advisors, beloved family members, close friends. I pray none of you ever face what I've faced. But if you see warning signs, don't dismiss them because of love or loyalty. Love means protecting those we care about, even from themselves. The final slide appeared a recent photo of Margaret and me, weathered by the ordeal, but still standing together. My wife asked me once how I could sit across from them knowing their plans. The answer was simple. To protect my family, I would endure any deception, play any role, sacrifice any comfort. That's what love truly means. Not blind trust, but vigilant protection. Thank you all for sharing this evening with us. I concluded. For supporting Stavros Aerospace through triumph and trial. The bar is open, dinner will be served shortly, and I hope you'll join me in looking forward to the next 35 years with wisdom earned through hardship. The applause started slowly, then built to thunderous levels. People rose to their feet, a standing ovation, not for my business success, but for survival, for protecting what mattered most, even at personal cost. I left the stage immediately surrounded by colleagues offering support and journalists seeking additional details. Mr. Stavros, a young reporter pushed forward. What about your daughter? Will she keep the baby? That's her decision and her story to tell, I replied firmly. I'll support whatever choice brings her peace. Janet Morrison appeared at my elbow, steering me away from the press. Magnificent presentation, Apollo. Painful, but necessary. The company will weather this storm. I know, I assured her. We've weathered worse. This just hit closer to home. The evening continued with dinner and conversation. I noticed certain competitors slinking out early, perhaps reconsidering their own business practices. Law enforcement officials present asked for copies of my security protocols. Marriage counselors approached Margaret about speaking to groups about recognizing manipulation. Near midnight, as the event wound down, Marcus approached one final time. "I want to thank you again for trusting me," he said. "When I saw those photos, I almost didn't call." Photography ethics usually means not interfering, but something told me this was different. "Your instincts saved my family," I replied, shaking his hand warmly. "I owe you more than money can repay." As Margaret and I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a text. "Dr. Hernandez, Sarah watched the live stream of your speech. She wants to see you tomorrow. I think it's a good sign." I showed Margaret the message. Her eyes glistened with tears, the first sign of vulnerability she'd allowed herself in weeks. "Our baby's coming home," she whispered. "Not home yet," I cautioned. "But it's a start. Healing takes time." We left the ballroom hand in hand, the weight of the evening's revelations lifting slightly. Behind us, the story was already spreading across news networks and social media. By morning, the aerospace world would be buzzing with the tale of betrayal and justice. But for now, I focused on what mattered most. Tomorrow, I would see my daughter. The rest could wait. 3 months passed before the trials began. I sat in the courtroom gallery, Margaret on one side, Sarah on the other. My daughter's hand rested protectively over her growing belly, 7 months along now. The therapy had helped, though shadows still lingered in her eyes. She'd chosen to keep the baby, determined to give the child a better father figure than Bradley had pretended to be. Bradley Coleman stood in orange jumpsuit and shackles as the judge read the charges. Murder in the first degree for both previous wives. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Attempted theft of defense secrets. The list continued for several minutes. His attorney, a public defender after Bradley's assets were frozen, looked defeated before testimony even began. Sarah tensed beside me as prosecutors presented evidence. The recorded conversations where Bradley discussed his plans. Financial records showing money transfers from his dead wife's accounts. Testimony from the first wife's sister who'd spent years gathering evidence the police had dismissed. When the medical examiner explained how both women had actually died poisoned slowly over months to simulate illness before the final doses, Sarah excused herself. I found her in the courthouse bathroom sobbing into Margaret's shoulder. "He made me coffee every morning," she whispered. "Just like them. If you hadn't discovered the truth." "But we did discover it," Margaret said firmly. "You're safe. The baby's safe. That's what matters now." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Bradley's facade cracked as evidence mounted, revealing the psychopath beneath. He screamed at witnesses, threatened prosecutors, had to be removed from court twice. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Life without parole, consecutive sentences, ensuring he'd never walk free again. Victor's trial followed immediately. My brother looked older, grayer, his prison time already wearing on him. He'd tried to cut a deal offering information about his casino connections in exchange for leniency, but the evidence was too overwhelming. 25 years for conspiracy, racketeering, and attempted elder abuse. At 71, it was effectively a life sentence. "You destroyed our family." He spat at me during victim impact statements. "Father would be ashamed." "Father would be ashamed of what you became," I replied calmly. "I offered you partnership 20 years ago. You chose revenge instead. This is the consequence of that choice." George pleaded guilty to avoid trial, accepting 15 years in exchange for full restitution. Diane had already taken everything in the divorce, selling their house to help repay what he'd stolen. She appeared at the sentencing, elegant in her fury. 30 years of lies, she told the court. Every dinner party, every family vacation, every moment of friendship was built on theft. I hope prison gives him time to find the conscience he lost. The legal aftermath continued for months. Civil suits from Bradley's victims' families. Corporate restructuring at Stavros Aerospace. Media attention that gradually shifted from sensational to sympathetic as the full story emerged. Through it all, we focused on rebuilding. Sarah gave birth on a spring morning, a healthy boy she named Marcus Timothy, honoring both the photographer who'd saved us and my father. I held my grandson for the first time in the delivery room, tears streaming down my face as he gripped my finger with surprising strength. "He looks like you, Dad," Sarah said softly. "Same stubborn chin." "Let's hope he inherits better judgment in partners than both of us," I replied, making her laugh for the first time in months. The healing wasn't linear. Sarah had good days and bad days, nightmares where Bradley returned, panic attacks triggered by certain cologne scents or coffee brewing, but she persevered, attending therapy religiously, joining a support group for women who'd survived predatory relationships. She moved back home temporarily, needing the security of family while rebuilding her life. I converted the guest wing into a private apartment, giving her independence within safety. Margaret threw herself into grandmother duties with enthusiasm that brought light back to our home. Marcus Chen became an unofficial uncle, visiting regularly to photograph little Marcus's milestones. He'd started teaching Sarah photography, giving her a creative outlet for processing her trauma. Her photos, dark at first, gradually filled with more light as months passed. "I want to tell my story," she announced one evening at dinner. "Not for sympathy, but to help other women recognize manipulation before it's too late." "Are you sure you're ready?" Margaret asked gently. "Dr. Hernandez thinks it could be therapeutic, and if it saves even one woman from what I experienced." She started a blog, then a support forum. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of women shared similar stories of charming predators who'd targeted them for their family's wealth or connections. Sarah's honesty about missing red flags, about how intelligent people could be manipulated, resonated deeply. A year after the trials, we held another party at the Marriott Ballroom. This time, a genuine celebration. Janet Morrison had exceeded all expectations as president, landing 3 major contracts. The company's reputation, rather than suffering from the scandal, had actually strengthened. Clients appreciated our commitment to integrity, even when it meant exposing internal corruption. "You could have covered it up," General Morrison, no relation to Janet, told me at the party. "Many would have. Your transparency earned more trust than 20 years of perfect operations." Sarah attended with baby Marcus, now walking unsteadily but determinedly. She'd started dating again cautiously with a pediatrician who understood her history and didn't pressure her pace. Watching her laugh at something he whispered, I saw glimpses of the daughter I'd known before Bradley's shadow fell over our lives. "Proud of you," I told her during a quiet moment. "I'm proud of you too, Dad. For protecting me even when I couldn't see the danger. For being the wolf when I needed one." The evening concluded with a surprise. The board had commissioned a new conference room, the Marcus Chen Room, honoring the photographer, whose vigilance had saved the company. Marcus himself unveiled the plaque, speechless for once. "I just did my job," he managed finally. "Sometimes doing our job means saving lives," I replied. Never underestimate the value of paying attention. Life settled into new rhythms. I remained CEO, but delegated more, spending precious time with my grandson. Margaret and I traveled, rediscovering each other after the crisis had passed. We visited Prague, where my parents had met, and renewed our vows in the church where they'd married. Sarah grew stronger daily, her blog becoming a book, then a speaking career. She testified before Congress about predatory marriage fraud, advocating for better legal protections. Her transformation from victim to advocate inspired thousands. One autumn evening, I sat in my home office reviewing the latest photos Marcus had taken of little Marcus's 2nd birthday. The boy had my stubbornness indeed, insisting on climbing everything, despite repeated tumbles. In one shot, he'd finally reached the top of his play structure, grinning triumphantly. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Sarah entered carrying tea and her laptop. "Dad, I've been thinking about something Dr. Hernandez said, about forgiveness." "Oh." "I forgive you for deceiving me," I understand why you did it. But more importantly, I forgive myself for not seeing what Bradley was, for bringing him into our lives. You were targeted by a professional predator, I reminded her. There's nothing to forgive. I know that intellectually, but the heart takes longer to accept it. She paused, choosing words carefully. I want you to know that despite everything, I'm grateful. For your protection, for your strength, for showing me that real love means standing guard against wolves, even when they wear sheep's clothing. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Denver. The city lights began twinkling on each one, representing lives and stories unknown to us. Somewhere out there, other predators stalked their prey. Other families faced betrayal and loss. But in this moment, in this room, we were safe. We were healing. We were together. The grandson I'd protected before his birth played in the next room, his laughter bright with innocence we'd fought to preserve. Sarah typed on her laptop, helping another woman recognize manipulation tactics. Margaret hummed in the kitchen, preparing dinner with herbs from her garden that bloomed despite everything. Bradley remained in maximum security prison, his appeals exhausted. Victor had died 6 months into his sentence, a heart attack in his cell, taking his bitterness to the grave. George served his time quietly, teaching literacy to other inmates, perhaps finding redemption in small acts of service. Dad, Sarah said suddenly, would you do it again, knowing the pain it would cause? I considered the question seriously. The months of deception, watching my daughter's happiness built on lies, the aftermath of shattered trust and slow healing. The image of my grandson safe and loved flashed through my mind. Every single time, I answered without hesitation. Protecting family isn't always clean or painless. Sometimes love looks like betrayal. Sometimes salvation comes through deception. But yes, I would play the confused old man 1,000 times over to keep you safe. She nodded, understanding in her eyes that hadn't existed before this trial by fire. We'd all aged years and months, gained wisdom through wounds. But we'd survived. More than that, we'd emerged stronger, bound by shared truth, rather than comfortable lies. The story could have ended differently. Sarah could have drunk poisoned coffee one morning. I could have been locked away in a facility, drugged into compliance while criminals sold my life's work. Margaret could have been left alone, children turned against her by master manipulators. Instead, a photographer noticed something wrong. An old soldier remembered his training. A family's love proved stronger than carefully laid plots. Not a fairy tale ending marked as we all were by scars, but a real ending. Messy and painful, and ultimately triumphant. What would you have done in my position? If you discovered your child's spouse was a killer, would you have the patience to gather evidence while playing weak? Could you deceive your own daughter to save her life? Would you risk everything you'd built to expose the truth? I hope none of you ever face such choices. But if you do, remember that strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it roars like a lion. Sometimes it waits like a wolf. And sometimes it looks like a confused old man, shuffling through his days while planning the complete destruction of those who threaten what he loves. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If this story helps even one person recognize manipulation, protect their family, or trust their instincts when something seems wrong, then the telling has been worthwhile. Please share this story with those you love. Like and subscribe if you found value in our experience. Comment with your own stories of overcoming betrayal or recognizing deception before it was too late. May you all have the wisdom to see truly, the strength to act decisively, and the love that makes both worthwhile. Stay vigilant, stay protective, and above all, stay together. The wolves are always hunting, but together, we are always stronger.